Tony Passon, member for Barker. Thanks for joining us again on Flow from Canberra.
Pleasure.
Now, you've got a fair few friends out the front of Parliament House in Canberra, I gather. They're mainly gabbing on about the vaccine mandates and the jabs, I understand.
Yeah, they are, and it's great to see people coming to Canberra. The nation's capital was built as the seat of government, and as the seat of government, it should also be the home for peaceful demonstrations. And, props to all those people that are coming to Canberra to express their view in a peaceful and democratic way.
Now, as I understand it, their concerns are about the mandates for vaccines that have been given in some sectors. Your Prime Minister's saying, look, they really should be directing their anger at the states rather than the federal government about this.
And he's right about that. The reality is these mandates are being set up under state health mandates, and so the people responsible for those are state governments, state premiers, state chief health officers. I've been pretty clear at my position, Ricky, from day one. I'm now triple vaccinated, so I'm by no means an anti-vaxxer, but that was a decision I made myself of my own free will. I believe everyone should be entitled to make that decision of their own choice, and they shouldn't be, if you like, tacitly threatened to take the vaccine for fear of losing their job. I mean, that's a mandate by another name.
Well, looking at another issue that I think the Coalition would say it had a mandate for, which was religious freedom reform. This has fallen over in the federal parliament, at least for the time being, it would appear. Labor's Catherine King told us this morning that this was simply the Coalition trying to wedge Labor and say that wanted Christians to vote for them.
Frustrating, Ricky, because as you correctly point out, this position was clearly enunciated before the last federal election. We took it to the Australian people. We had a mandate to legislate it. And rather than Catherine indicate that this is some sort of, too smart by half politics, it's actually the Parliament and the Coalition government trying to keep faith with the commitments it made prior to the last federal election, commitments which were endorsed by the Australian people. And actually, what we've seen is an attempt to hijack this agenda and this debate without reference to proper processes. Now, the introduction in particular of protection for transgender students is complex, it's delicate, and it needs to be reviewed by the Australian Law Reform Commission, and none of that was discussed in the consultations leading up to this debate, and it's not the kind of thing you can inject into the debate at the 11th hour and expect there won't be unintended consequences, as we've seen.
Well, I know you'll probably say Liberals have a difference with Labor when it comes to crossing the floor. They've got the freedom to do so, but it's not a good look for your party to have, was it 5 or 6 cross the floor to vote for that transgender amendment?
I agree with you, Ricky. It's a particularly poor look, and I'm disappointed. You're right, my colleagues are entitled to express their free vote and they don't get kicked out of the party, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't use that privilege judiciously. You should. And on top of everything else, there are some fairly basic requirements and respectful requirements. When someone is considering doing this, notice needs to be given to the whole party via the party room. Now, that didn't happen in 4 of the 5 instances, and so you're right, it's a bad look, and I'm incredibly disappointed that those protocols weren't followed, and I wish I hope colleagues have reflected on that over the last few days.
This makes me think about the question of preselection. I know there's a little bit going on regarding, it's one of your colleagues in New South Wales, Susan Lee, but, is your own preselection locked in? Is there consequences for those people on preselection potentially?
Yeah, well, Ricky, I've been preselected, but I expect maybe not necessarily in relation to the forthcoming election. I don't know. I'm not a member of their respective colleges, but I think one of the great privileges of being a member of the Liberal Party at a lay level is you get a direct say in relation to everyone's preselection. So that keeps people who have the great privilege like me to be pre-selected candidates very honest, and I expect there'll be a number of Liberal Party members in the seats of the individuals who made this choice, considering what action they might be able to take in future pre-selections.
Now, speaking of action on very much on the local ground, the Tanunda and Angaston shows largely not going ahead, Angaston in a restricted format, and the federal government did say it had some grants to support, I guess, young ambassadors going out in sort of a alignment with these country shows. You've got the Lucindale and Mundalla ones coming up. We're speaking to them shortly. Is there anything more or anything I've missed that the federal government's doing to make sure shows get back up and running again?
Well, Ricky, we've now been through effectively 2 show years impacted by COVID. For the first of those years, there were a large number of cancellations across my electorate, and shows received a total of $403,000 in support. Basically, the larger the show, the greater the funding. Speaking to shows on the ground, that funding meant that they were able to prepare for the subsequent show. In the 2021 year, a number of shows were again cancelled, frustratingly, and we've provided funding for those shows cancelled in 2021 to apply for up to $70,000, similar program to the 2020 program. Tanunda and Angaston weren't eligible for either of those grants because, of course, thankfully, they were able to conduct their shows in both 2020, just before the pandemic broke, and 2021, while there was a sweet little window in early 2021 where we were allowed to have events of that size and scale. But now that they've been cancelled, I'm confident there'll be a further round of the supporting agricultural shows grants, but those things are yet to be worked through. I mean, it would be unconscionable that some shows cancelled in 2020 and 2021 have provided support funding and shows cancelled in 2022 not. So we'll work through that in the fullness of time. There are also grants available for show societies for capital that preceded the pandemic because, Ricky, we understand the importance of events like regional shows and field days, and so those programs continue to roll out. But in terms of specific funding for shows that are cancelled, we did it in 2020, we did it in 2021, and I've got every confidence that we'll do it in 2022. I just hope, like many of your listeners, that we don't have to keep doing this because I want to get back to living as close to normal as we can practicably, and for me that gets back to having events like shows and field days. I mean, if we can have the Fringe in Adelaide, surely we can have shows and field days around regional South Australia.
And just lastly, I picked up that you've been promoting an opportunity for young people to get a scholarship or grant from the federal government to assist them going to university, but is it contingent on them relocating to a metropolitan area like Adelaide, or can they get that grant even if they're still studying, say, remotely or the like?
No, so those grants are available for people that relocate, Ricky. In terms of people studying remotely, we've rolled out a series of regional university hubs. There's one in the Barossa, there's one in the Riverland, there's one in Murray Bridge. These are all facilities to assist people who are working remotely and studying either part-time or potentially full-time online. I'd encourage any of your listeners who might be in that cohort to reach out to my office. We can link you up with these regional study hubs. They're an amazing support. It's not quite like doing having the whole on-campus university experience, but it does provide you with some infrastructure to wrap around you while you're doing those studies.
Oh, and just give us a number you've just mentioned, contacting the office, a number that people should call. 85312466. That's my Murray Bridge office. Any inquiries on that or any matters, feel free to contact us. Oh, Tony Passon, thanks for your time calling in from Canberra. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Ricky.